All right, so get this. We're going deep on how blockchain could actually help small towns thrive. Those around 25,000 people. And we've got some research suggesting it's not just hype.
Yeah, it's really interesting stuff. Most people, when they hear blockchain, they just think cryptocurrency.
Yeah, Bitcoin, all that.
Right. But this goes way beyond that.
Okay, so help me out here.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, they hear blockchain and it's like their brains just shut off. Like, how do we make this relevant to real life, real problems in a small town? Where does blockchain even fit in?
Well, the cool thing is what makes blockchain secure for, say, Bitcoin, that transparency, that unchangeable record, that's actually super valuable for building trust at a local level.
Ah, I see. So it's almost like blockchain becomes this foundation of trust in a place where, everyone knows everyone.
Exactly. And because it cuts out the middleman, it lets folks interact directly with businesses or even just with each other.
More local control, right?
Hmm.
This idea of local empowerment, that's pretty powerful. Could you give me an example of what that actually looks like in, say, a town of 25,000?
Imagine a system where you earn, let's call them town tokens for doing good stuff in your town.
Town tokens. Huh?
Yeah. You volunteered at the library, you're really good about recycling. Boom, town tokens. And you can spend them at local businesses.
Oh, so like I get a discount on my coffee because I helped clean up the park last weekend. That's kind of cool.
Right. It keeps the money local.
But how does this actually help the whole town? I mean, that's a nice perk for me, but
It creates this localized economy. The tokens encourage folks to spend money within the town itself, so it's circulating among residents, among businesses. Everyone benefits.
it's like a reward system, but for the whole town. Makes sense. Now, you mentioned cutting out the middleman. A lot of small towns, they have trouble funding stuff, community projects. Can blockchain help there?
Absolutely. One of the big things is crowdfunding, but on blockchain.
Okay, interesting.
So let's say the town needs a new, I don't know, skate park. Instead of just relying on donations or whatever, they could launch a campaign on blockchain.
People could buy in.
Exactly. Skate park tokens. Right. And maybe those tokens give you perks later, discounts on events, stuff like that.
So it's like investing in your town and you can see exactly where the money's going.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. What about helping out local businesses? Like a lot of small towns have farmers or producers, people who are trying to sell their goods. Can blockchain make a difference there?
This is where it gets really interesting. Consumers want to know where their food comes from. Blockchain lets you track that whole process.
Oh, okay. Like farm to table, but with blockchain.
Exactly. Imagine you're at the farmer's market, you scan a QR code on your eggs, you see exactly which farm they came from, what the chickens ate, even temperature logs from transport.
Wow. So I know my eggs are actually local, not just labeled that way.
Right, builds trust between the consumer and the farmer.
That makes a lot of sense. But here's the thing that always trips me up.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't all this blockchain stuff really complicated?
Well,
Like, I imagine it'd be super expensive to set up. You'd need some tech genius, and a lot of small towns don't have those resources.
yeah, that's a really common concern. But what's cool about blockchain is that it's scalable. Like, you don't have to do everything at once, right? You don't have to change your whole system overnight. You can pick one thing to start with, pilot project.
So some baby steps?
Yeah, exactly. Baby steps. And you can learn as you go. You can build from there.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And there are actually organizations out there popping up that are specifically designed to help towns with this, to provide that expertise and support. So it's not as daunting as it might seem at first,
Right.
which is great because, we often hear about blockchain and we think big tech companies, Wall Street,
Mm-hmm.
it's really nice to see it applied to something smaller, a smaller scale, more community focused. Speaking of financial systems, a lot of small towns, particularly rural areas, they have a hard time accessing banking services. Could blockchain help with that?
You're hitting on a really crucial point because blockchain can actually revolutionize financial inclusion, especially in small towns. One example is microfinance and lending platforms built on blockchain.
Yeah.
So imagine a system where residents can lend money directly to each other or to local businesses without needing a bank.
Oh, so instead of going to a big bank that, might not really understand the needs of a small rural community,
Yeah.
you could get a loan from your neighbor, someone who believes in your business idea.
Exactly. And because everything is transparent on the blockchain, it creates this system of accountability and trust, between lenders and borrowers.
Right.
And that can be huge for entrepreneurs who might not qualify for traditional loans for whatever reason.
It's like a community credit union, but on steroids,
Kind of, yeah.
That's really interesting. We've talked a lot about the economic benefits, but what about the social fabric of a small town? Can blockchain help strengthen that sense of community.
Absolutely. And this is one of the things I found most interesting, actually, using blockchain to create a platform for sharing resources.
Okay.
Imagine residents being able to easily rent or borrow tools, equipment, maybe even things like a 3D printer from each other.
So instead of everybody having to buy their own lawnmower that sits in the garage 11 months out of the year.
Right, exactly. It saves people money, it reduces waste, and it encourages sharing and collaboration.
And I bet the blockchain part makes it super easy to manage.
Yeah.
You can track who has what, you can automate payments, you can even build in a reputation system.
Yeah, absolutely. So people know who's reliable.
That's really cool. And it doesn't even have to be just physical items, right? Like
Right.
you could share skills knowledge,
Right.
like maybe tutoring services or workshops, or even just advice, like a virtual town square. That's awesome. We've talked about residents, we've talked about businesses. What about local government? Is there a role for blockchain there to make things more transparent and accountable?
Oh, there are definitely some really interesting possibilities there using blockchain to create a platform for residents to give feedback.
Like a digital suggestion box.
Kind of, but with way more security and transparency.
So you could share your opinion about a new development project without worrying about, someone getting mad at you or your voice not being heard.
Right, exactly. And that kind of feedback loop can lead to, better decisions and people feeling like they have more of a say in what happens in their town.
It's really amazing to see how blockchain can touch so many different parts of life in a small town, from economics to the social side to even politics. It's really fascinating. But I have to ask, how does a town even get started with all this? What's the first step?
That's the big question, right? And honestly, it depends. Like, every town's got its own thing going on. But if I was talking to a town of 25,000, I'd say start with something that, helps the most people right off the bat, something with a ripple effect.
So not necessarily the most complicated project, but the one that'll have the biggest impact right away.
Exactly. And for that reason, I'd probably go with the local digital currency idea.
Okay.
It's something people get, it's easy to understand, and it affects everyone, residents, businesses, even the local government.
Right. Like those town tokens we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
It's practical, it keeps money in the town, and it kind of gets people used to the whole blockchain thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, dipping your toes into the blockchain pool. Once folks see how it can help them, help their community, then you can start thinking bigger.
It's almost like building a blockchain ecosystem from the ground up.
That's a great way to put it.
Start small, build trust, then grow from there.
So cool. Well, this has been a really fascinating deep dive. We started with this whole idea of blockchain for small towns. And wow, we've covered so much ground.
We have.
Digital currencies, crowdfunding, those transparent supply chains. It really seems like this technology could change the game.
It's really about using technology to give people more control, making communities stronger and more connected. That's what gets me excited.
Absolutely. So for everyone listening out there, we want to leave you with a question. If you could launch one blockchain project in your town, what would it be? What would be the most impactful thing for your community? Think about it. You never know. You might just start the next big thing right in your own backyard. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, keep exploring.